You are now listening to the Soul Mechanics Podcast. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/soulmapping.life or Instagram soulmapping_life. With your host and personal guides, Aeon and Sophia. Sit back and enjoy as they tune you into practical wisdom for the art of being human. For more in-depth guidance and resources on your personal journey, check out our offerings at soulmapping.life. And now, for those that wish to thrive and prosper living their soul's purpose as spiritual entrepreneurs, check out our brand new soul actualization project at soulmapping.life/actualize.
What's going on out there, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to your third episode of Soul Mechanics Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Aeon, and I'm with the beautiful and lovely co-host, Sophia. And today we're going to be talking about a number of different topics that have kind of come up a lot lately in the field. Things such as dogma, fear-based reality programs, conspiracy theories. The ultimate guide to entity removal was a potential name that we thought of for this show. So we're going to be getting really, really deep into kind of different fear-based spiritual programs and how we can transform them and transmute them and really get out of this kind of like old paradigm of, you know, codependency on these quote unquote like externalized eidolons and different things like that that can really kind of distort our view of reality and kind of get us into some sticky places sometimes. You know, for Sophia and I, we've kind of been working with a lot of these different materials for years and years now, and we've seen so many different things come up for us, and a lot of it was based around, you know, just our kind of like general reality model and how we were interpreting different things that were coming up. And, before we get into that though, I want to talk about, a little bit about like what caused us to decide to do this show, because I would say within the past few weeks, we're just seeing like so much stuff coming up around, just weird things. Like as a holistic practitioner, somebody that works with clients and kind of like guides people through different things that they're going in their life. You know, I feel like sometimes it's so important, the kind of like verbiage and the language that we're really using to work with people, and like not transmitting them something that's kind of like almost getting them into like a worse place than when they started off before they were with us. And I guess over the past like few weeks, and I mean, this is something that's kind of come up just in general, like over the years, but particularly lately, like just cases of different people kind of coming to us with almost like a desperation of sorts around different things that they were like told by different people, and places where, you know, they're coming from this place of like fear, like, what do I do about this different thing? Or, you know, just really stuff that like got told to them that was, like I said, like kind of like putting them in a worse place than they were in before they got there. And then of course there's all the major stuff that happens with just like the media in general, and books and these different conditionings that come along, that, and it all really just goes back to like pulling us away from our own sovereignty, our own energy, and our own power. And so we're really going to be getting into today, like, just kind of cutting through the crap, just a lot of junk that's really out there, that's really just pulling people away from their own sovereignty and their own power. And we're just going to be like weeding through a lot of these just kind of like old, outdated models that really aren't serving people. And Yeah, so that's going to be like a bit about what we're getting into. Danny, do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can talk about the concept of orders, like we used to talk about how, we all woke up out of the quote-unquote matrix, and we start to see that there's so many things going on in the world that, we felt weren't honest, and, we're being lied to, and all of these things. It's kind of a shock when you wake up and you start to see all of the corruption and, everything in the world that you see. And then from there, you're kind of left open to, when you start seeking either spirituality or trying to find the truth, you're kind of like left open.
Like a little kid or
to like all of these different ideologies, and you don't really know who to trust at that point. So you go through this other order, so it's kind of like a little, I don't want to call it like a trap, but it's like you're stuck in another framework of belief systems when you wake up into, these other things, whether it be spirituality and, there's the government is corrupt, and we feel like they're doing satanic rituals, and there's all these things, that you start to go, oh my God, like what's going on?
Down the proverbial rabbit hole,
Yeah, so I think that's really kind of, if that makes sense, about what we call like the orders, is these kind of any sort of ideologies or belief systems that really keep you trapped in a fear-based reality. And then from there, if you don't get out of it, you're kind of going further and further down into the rabbit hole of fear, which I did. I went all through the whole conspiracies and, and I'm not saying that stuff isn't real or any of that, but, what it did to my life was extremely disempowering, and I was living in a state of, like, fear and paranoia and just like, oh my God, what's going on? And growing up, I, went to a Christian school, and I personally am not religious. I know that that's also something that is part of the world conditioning, and it's another order, So I feel that I've always kind of had this energy of, I guess, doubting the whole religious system anyways. So for me, I think that that's something that helped me when I started seeing people around me kind of going into the paranoia. And what really got me was people that were friends and watching like family members and people that making major life decisions out of these like kind of fabricated orders that are based in fear, that leads other people to go, oh, that person's got an entity, this person is possessed, or all of these things. They've got dark energies, and we used to always talk about it too. Oh, the hanger-ons, and all these different words for giving yourself a reason to allow yourself to not have the responsibility,
right?
Or to give away your power. So, yeah, I mean, it's coming up again, and we already did a talk on this once, not just on this, but on a few other things as well, and I just feel that it's so important. I've seen clients, friends, family members who are making major life decisions, ruining relationships out of, well, someone told me that in a past life I was raped and, all of these things, and now they're like basically re-traumatizing themselves and coming into a space of like, oh, I need to clear this programming, or they're staying in bad relationships because someone told them, oh, in a past life, so-and-so, you were cursed and this and that, and you have to get out of the pattern, and kind of just all these belief systems that people then, we don't know what to do. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to figure this out, get rid of the entity, get out of this past life karma program, which there's a way to like actually not have to be in that loop anymore, in that order, in that dogma, that belief system, that religion. It's all the same thing. When I was getting into quote unquote spirituality, some of the first things I found was like, that I was kind of having an issue personally with myself about like praying or worshiping or like, saying all like deifying and just making all of these offerings to the gods and all of these things, I was like, I don't know, something doesn't sound right. And it didn't feel right to me for a while. And
when you remember for a while there, like a lot of what we were going through too is like almost going from like technique to technique or like system to system, like having like different sorts of weird energies, like, you know, like removed or like, or like entities. And we were like, almost at one point we felt like we were like we're constantly quote unquote under attack. You know, by like
we're getting attacked.
Yeah, like
like now I look back, I'm like, oh my god.
Right.
So yeah, I mean,
and I just want to clarify for a second too, like when we're talking about these orders, you know, like everybody, you know, we all need like a reality model or like a worldview or like some sort of like language or overlay to really like understand everything that's happening to us, in order to navigate and describe things and share things with other people. But I think, you know, what Sophia and I are talking about right now, it really like getting into is really getting to the bottom of like, is the reality model that we're using, is it serving us, and how is it serving us, as opposed to like something that's actually like harming us or siphoning more of our energy, or, you know, actually like distorting things for us in a way that's, you know, like I was saying, almost making things worse than it was before we quote unquote woke up, you know?
Yeah, like just living in that fear.
Yeah.
And I think that that's at least the way that I kind of gauge whether or not things are true for me, because I know that we're all kind of having our own experience here. But for me personally, if there's any sort of fear involved with it, like, you know, you look at most religions, if you don't worship, if you don't do this and that, you know, then you're not going to get into heaven, or you're going to go to some scary place and go to hell, or, you know, all of these different things. If there's any of that in my like framework of reality, I know automatically that there's something not right, you know, because that's not what it's all about. Like, I really feel that that's just another order, like we were talking about. So yeah, it's just interesting to see that going on, and with the collective programming on the planet, I feel, and like, what's the main thing? Like, why, if we feel like there are these orders, right? Which, first of all, I don't feel that somebody set them up, or that it's like a trap, or really that it's something that's intentional and someone's tricking us, right? Because that's really the feeling that most people have with all of these things, that there's an entity, that there's all of these situations where, oh, something tricked me, because in the world I was tricked. You know, I came into this world and it's scary and it's crazy and I got tricked. Right. But
like versus models, like me versus everything else or some other thing, or, you know.
Yeah, and like the collective programming is that, you know, that's kind of like the collective order that we're all in right now, is that we've all been like tricked. And I think that this is not something that is negative even. I feel like the whole thing with the government and all this stuff on the planet is in order for us to tap back in, to really finally break free from all of the orders, you know, to where we're like, okay, there's actually nothing out there that's going to try to hurt me or harm me, or it's tricking me, you know. That's like, if you're living in any state of fear, you're in an order and you're diminished, you know, your power is like kind of, you're letting it go yourself.
Exactly. And that's not saying that fear can't be useful or have a purpose, because those things, those feelings are coming up for a reason as well. It's like, you know, when a tornado is coming towards the house or something, it's not saying like, oh, like you should never feel fear. Like the fear is coming up because it's like, oh, okay, well maybe like board up the windows and lock the doors, or like, you know, it's guiding us into our energy to take our power back and take control over this situation, whether it's surrendering or like taking some sort of preparatory measures or whatever it is. But not, you know, the tornado is coming, okay, I'm gonna like cower in fear and freeze up or something.
Well, and fear is just an energy. If you kind of think of it as like a fast, and maybe there's like uncertainty, you know. So if we want to like describe fear like that might be what it is. It's like kind of like, whoop, here it is, and we're not really certain like what we should do. So obviously, you slow down.
It's our body's way of communicating with us.
Well, most of the time, a lot of times, we don't want to look at the fear. We run away from it, and that's where we get kind of in these orders, and it's like that's how it has control, or we give it control over us, because the fear, this energy, this fast, uncertain energy, is just something that we have to look at so that we know where to move. It's a powerful energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's part of the conditioning and programming that we're all breaking. And then with that too brings in the question of morality. And this is something that maybe some people won't agree with, and that's okay too, but I feel that there's no good or bad like in life. It's just things just are the way that they are, and part of the collective programming in society and conditioning is also about all these judgments that are in a way where not only are we putting fearful things in charge and like controlling, and all of our fears kind of like we are less than the fear, so it's controlling us, but we also put people and gurus and the shamans and all these people above us, right? And we put ourselves below, or vice versa. We might put other people below us. And it's another order. It's like the good or bad, morality, judgment, not discernment, but judgment in a way where it's like either I'm better than you, or wow, I think that you're so much better than me and I feel less than, which is not integrity. That is the inappropriate shadow form of judgment. So that also comes into play with this. So what we want to understand is that we have good discernment, and when fear comes in, the whole thing with like not being in an order is understanding that you're on an even playing field with everything, right? So there's no morality, and there's nothing out to get you or trick you. And this is how you clear your entities. So people that are paying hundreds and thousands maybe of dollars to go to somebody to tell them, oh, I extracted an implant and an archon from you. Hey, look, you can do this for free, and just understand that you have the power to like not hand your power away anymore to these belief systems. Take on
a new program that is actually much more like self-serving and empowering, because all of this stuff, it's like Danny was talking about the fear. It's like, okay, this fear comes in, but then we're going to give it like a face and a name of a certain kind, right? Like we're going to externalize it into this thing, when in reality, a lot of it, what it really is a trauma. It's a trauma that we had, or a conditioning that is imprinted into our emotional body, our physical body, that's coming up for us to work through, so that we can actually take the power back from that thing. Because, I relate it a lot to like, this, we're going to get into this a little bit later. We're actually developing this whole, we call it the self-illumination pathway around some of this information. But it's like when we were a little kid, right? We were like running all around, and we kind of lived in this like kind of almost like a magical state where whatever we would imagine, we would generate the feelings of those things, and like we would take part in these awesome like magical worlds where the card that we have in our hand, it would be flying around, and we would actually generate the feelings of what it was like to be the knight in shining armor, or these different things. But then as the trauma and conditioning came in from these certain episodes in our life, whatever it was, more and more energy gets stuck in these patterns and traumas and belief systems and conditioning. And then as we like grow up and grow older, we're left this like pathway to go back and take power back from these things.
Right, yeah, and it's like when we were children, like what are all these traumas coming from and conditioning? The main thing is that we weren't allowed to be ourselves, because the world wants us to be like everybody else, homogenized and whittled down, and anything that's different or unique is seen as a threat in like the collective's perspective. So part of that trauma and conditioning is that when we were basically homogenized and told like, oh, don't do that, that's different, not everybody does that, don't do that. Then we develop this fear that maybe we don't know what we're doing in reality. And like we start to develop all these fears, and oh, I'm not going to be accepted, there's going to be a withdrawal of love and support, or all of these things, which really, we need to be able to look at the fear and to be able to process it. And when we're kids, we don't have the words and we don't really understand what's going on to be able to talk about it. But now that a lot of us are able to process that in a different way, we can start seeing how the fears in our lives that lead us to project our energies into an external demon, or there's something controlling me because we feel that we can't control that energy. We realize that that's coming now from traumas, and that once you realize that, what you can do is take a deep breath when you feel fear, and you can realize that, okay, like this is coming from a conditioning or a program, and it doesn't serve me. Do I need to do something with this fear? Maybe you do. Maybe you actually need to, it's telling you to do something.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go do that. But as far as looking into all of these external deities and demons and things like that, even if you believed that, how is that going to serve you? How is that helping your life? Because I am seeing people that really believe that they have been cursed, that they have demons, that their children have demons, that this and that. I mean, it's crazy, this does not help anybody. It's just taking everyone's power away, and we don't need to do that. So
and it's even, some of you out there too, you may be listening and even going as far as I did at one point to say, yeah, but I've been in these states, these awakened, altered states before, and I've actually seen these things, or come in direct contact with these things. Are you saying I'm crazy, or that's not real, or whatever? And not at all. Yes and no. That's the answer to that question, because I've been there in that state, and I've witnessed those quote unquote entities. But it took me, going through and processing and moving on to more constructive reality models and worldviews to realize that what I was seeing, I was just seeing energy. And then I was assigning.
Yeah, the mind creates a story for trying to figure out what the heck it's seeing. Because I've been in that too.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. And now what I understand is that we really do create those ideologies or those belief systems, and sometimes things do happen and we don't know how to explain it, so the mind goes, ooh, it's another being that came into my room, or this or that. And imagine if we take a different approach with that, something that's more empowering, which is definitely possible. So I just want to say too, if you're a coach or a consultant or other people in the world who are maybe trying to help consult other people and things like that, the goal should be to empower your client or the people that you're working with, and not to, bring them into fear and these types of states, and really allow this space for them to feel their own power. I feel like that's really the obligation of these types of people, these coaches and things like that. That's what we try to do, is really help people to make their own decisions, not to tell them this is how you should feel or this or that, but make your own decisions with everything. And how do we do that from a place that's not of fear?
Yeah.
So if you're a coach or somebody like that out there, and you may be telling people they have entities or things like that, you may want to reconsider that. I've definitely seen the effects in people's lives, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing is, a lot of these different models and systems have been adopted and created from a time where the world itself was a much different place. It was a lot more, it was a lot scarier in certain respects. The way that the identity, the quote unquote the ego or the lower, more immature masculine aspect of our identity, the way it's been developing over, however much time humans have been here on this planet, it's like we've been given this more mind-centered identity to allow the species on this planet to kind of proliferate more and expand more and get to this point where now we have these new pieces of information that have come to us through science, and we're switching now from a more mind-centered individual perception to a more collective. We're becoming more individual, but our perception is actually becoming more collective and nervous system based. And with that, we're moving from these older, more fear-based models to things that are more serving and that are more kind of like, I would say, neutral in their, in the way that they explain things.
Yeah, and I would say, too, it's just like, religious fanatics or people that take the really ancient stories literally, the mythologies and things like that, those were really artfully crafted stories that tried to depict more than what the stories were telling, with the way that they said it. But I don't feel we're meant to be taken literally. And I think that that's also part of the thing is we're all just seeking and searching to find the truth. And sometimes we get a little bit caught up on some things that maybe we're not supposed to be meant so literally. And then we're going to be talking about it in the future episodes too, about the genetics and the mutation that's taking place within our species. It's happening in 2027. And then really the search for a higher power, the search for God, the search and religion and all of these energies come from the 19th codon.
Yeah, which we're doing a special on this week in our private group.
Yeah, we're doing a class on it this week. But the 19 really is the pressure in the root center that is leading, it has been leading humanity to seek for a higher source, something, God or some sort of spiritual meaning. And that's been humanity's story, and that's about to change. That's the first thing that's going to change in 2027 is, those that are born after 2027 are not going to have this pressure to seek out something like a higher power or things like that. Imagine if that didn't exist in the world.
It'd be massive.
I mean, imagine. And everything is perfect how it is, and what we're understanding is that these are the codes. This is the mechanics of the universe, of the whole that we're a part of, is that a lot of this stuff is just mechanics. Even religion and finding God and, quote unquote spirituality and seeking for something either outside or inside ourselves that is more than the mundane. And that's great. That's fine. There's been a lot of mystical experiences that have happened, a lot of magic, a lot of, really amazing experiences for people in the collective. And, we're coming to the end of it. And I think that that's also why the world is really waking up, and a lot of people are into spirituality right now. And there's a lot of what we are talking about with the entities and, the fear programs. And that's okay. This is all part of the process too. It's just, we have to use discernment. So anything that you listen to or somebody tells you, and this is what we teach our clients, is how to tap into your own internal guidance system, which is really your strategy and authority. If you know anything about human design, the strategy and authority is the thing that aligns your vehicle so that when you're making a decision, and, based on also what you hear from other people, you know exactly what direction to go in and what is true for you or not. And you're not just kind of taking whatever is coming your way because the person has a fancy crystal and you really now look up to them. So, and that's okay. Everything is meant for a reason, and it's all a learning process. But I feel that collectively and individually, especially, we can come to this place of inner knowing and all of us be guiding ourselves and sharing, of course, what we're learning along the way. If it's not empowering, if it is fear-based in a way that doesn't give you an option to do anything about it, or some sort of dogma. That's the other thing with my framework, is if there's a lot of dogma, like this is the only way and nothing else works.
Yeah.
That to me is also a red flag. I'm like, oh, really? So those type of things are ways that you can discern. And we're not talking about discerning with your mind. You really want to tap into your body.
Well, and that's coming back what you were talking about, the internal authority. Mm-hmm. Really what the inner authority is that we're talking about is, so, there is an organizing intelligence to everything that we're experiencing. There is intelligence that inherently flows through everything in the universe, and whether it's the table or the desk or the person or anything really. And as like a point of awareness for that organizing intelligence, there is a specific place in our body. When people talk about quote unquote tapping into source, that's what we're inherently talking about, is each person with our unique individual design. We have a place within that is that trustable source of tapping into the intelligence of nature or the universe or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, to kind of take the next step, Danny was talking about these dogmas and these different things that are like leading us away. A lot of what this comes down to is basically like a codependency versus an interdependency. So like anything that is we're looking to outside of ourselves, whether it's a god, a government, a person in a relationship,
a system,
money, it could even be food. Like all of these things, food is a huge one. Like all of these things where we're placing them so far like above ourselves, or giving them so much power over us that we basically, collapse under the pressure of thinking like, what would we do without this thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing too, I was going to bring up how we were talking about, because we can use metaphors and mythology and different archetypal languages to help capture the feeling and essence of things without having to take it so literal. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we were to say, imagine it's like the world is our womb, mm-hmm. right? And these energies or programs or conditionings or all of these energies that are things that strip us of our power, we allow it, mm-hmm. however that looks like. These things could be considered as this metaphor as like the virus of mm-hmm. the womb, because just like in a woman's womb, her womb is actually made up of a lot of viruses to help differentiate between the growing child and the mother's body.
Exactly.
Right? So it creates this container. So we can actually think of these different programmings as viruses that help us to push us back into our space.
Into our sovereignty.
Right. Because we're here to tap into our own source. Exactly. It's like if we are here in this quote-unquote womb and we're going through life and experiencing all of these things, it doesn't matter if you used to believe that there was demons in your room. Maybe that led you to a place where then you realized that you were able to overcome that fear, mm-hmm. and come back into your power, and all of it's perfect. But I feel that we can look at things in this way, that I used to feel that the government and everything in the world is like so screwed. And I was like freaked out. I had my little anonymous mask in my apartment. I was protesting like 6 times a week and just trying to wake everybody up, and living in a state of panic and terror for like a few years. So I left the country. I was so freaked out. I left the country and lived overseas for a couple of years. And I was like, oh, okay, this is everywhere.
Right.
It's literally everywhere. And it's not helpful to try to run away from it, or to try to put the responsibility on an outside entity or the outside government or outside this or outside that we can take our power back collectively and realize that all this stuff has been part of the process.
Exactly.
And it's all here to empower us and bring us back into this space of like knowing who we are. And so, yeah, sometimes we, quote unquote, like get tested, or we like test ourselves, you know, and it's like, okay, are you ready to hold your power? Or do you still want to give it away to, you know, good and bad? Just like the knowledge of, you know, good and evil, the tree of, in Adam and Eve, right? The morality. It's like, do we really want to go down that path of like, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, and then
the zigzag.
Yeah, and it's like, that's also the virus. So part of this too is checking yourself where you are putting people above you, right? If you're putting gurus and these people above you, you are also inevitably creating a hierarchical reality for yourself, where when you meet other people, you know, you might put yourself above them, and you're kind of always stuck in a hierarchy of either being above someone or below them, which isn't in your power either.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you know, when it comes to kind of like the idea of time or something, right? Like I used to check in with myself a lot and realize when I was impatient that I was creating in my mind some sort of basically like an idea of some sort of thing that I was like in a race against, like some sort of like thing that it didn't even really have a face or a name that was going to like beat me if I didn't hurry up, you know? And the whole like gods and governments and these sorts of things, they work in the same way, where this energy like suck vacuum is created in our mind, and then our energy that pulls us away from like standing in our own power is just like, it's like constantly siphoning, and we're the ones doing it because we are the sovereign co-creator. So the only one that actually has the power to give away our power like that is us. And you know, this isn't even anything new per se. Like when we talk about like these different like you know, deities and archons and archetypes, if we go back into ancient Kemet, like pre-Egyptian, like back into the original initiation systems, that's the way that the quote-unquote gods, these archetypes, were used. They were used as internal representations of aspects of our own being. Basically, our inner psyche was compartmentalized into these different archetypes, and the different mantras and things would be used so that we could channel those energies through ourself. It wasn't looked at as like, oh, this being that I have to like bow down to and constantly give alms and whatever, these different things. And I'm not saying that we can't have a respect and awe and reverence for nature and for the earth and for the people around us. But like, are we like looking at them as something that's going to save us and take care of us? You know, that's a completely different thing. Where the true initiation systems, these inner archetypes were used as a way to tap into specific inner abilities. It's kind of like, okay, am I going to manifest my inner hero today, or am I going to manifest my inner mother today? Where, you know, the mother has this kind of like, you know, warm energy of catering to someone, where the hero needs to like stand up. And that's how these different archetypes were used. And it's only been, you know, within the past 1,000 years or so that a lot of these energies have been more placed on this weird pedestal.
Well, if you look at like religions and what happened with all the churches and everything, this was for sure how they were trying to control people.
Yeah.
Again, because they were trying to create a hierarchy and have some sort of control over the dumb sheep.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the same thing that's happening in the spiritual community. I don't feel that there's that many necessarily like vindictive or like kind of malicious people out there, but there definitely are some that are like preying on people that are waking up, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're having all these problems in your life because I can see this entity on you, and you need to pay me all this money so I can take it off of you. You know, so I mean, that sort of thing is going on.
When I think a lot of it too is just being stuck in the program, you know, themselves. Like people, like we said, we were once in a place where we were like adopting these different reality views, and it is, in a sense, almost like a virus where when you're stuck there, you're like kind of sharing it with other people or something.
Right,
you
yeah,
know?
and then your friends and people start getting all paranoid. And, you know, we actually had some really close friends in Florida who got really paranoid at one point and this was back when we were also into conspiracies. And, you know, I'm not saying those things aren't happening. And I feel that they are happening for a reason to wake people up because they're pretty sloppy about it. But the way that I was feeling about it and they were feeling about it at the time was not an empowering place. And basically, friendships got ruined because there was this, like, one of our friends basically, like, took pictures to this shaman in like Colombia or something and was like asking him about the group.
Yeah,
we were starting a community in Costa Rica. And you know, it's really funny because she came back the first time and told us like, oh, well, my shaman said that this person in the tribe is not good, and it was like one of our good friends, and we were like, okay. And some people believed her, and they like didn't. They were like unfriended our group friend, you know. And then the next time around, it was, now the shaman said it was Tom, you know, like that stuff. And it was like, so then we lost friends over that too, because they also got really paranoid that, you know, people are possessed or whatever, which is really, really silly. And I was like, wow, is that how you make decisions as a community? And take pictures to some guy in a hut in Colombia who you're paying a bunch of money to, and he just points at a picture, and then that's how you make a decision. Yeah, so I mean, we've experienced this firsthand also with people in our lives, and you know, it just comes down to what kind of reality do you want to live in. And I think that that's really the essence and the point of this talk, is that we do not have to be in that fear-based situation anymore. We can choose something else. And the only way that you can come to like the most centralization of your own power is realizing that all of it had a reason, it has a purpose, that everything is working out to your benefit. Everything is like for you, even when it looks crazy, because the mind is going, oh my God, no, we have to do something, and we have to, you know, go tell these demons off or something. You know, it's silly.
Every situation is always guiding us back to our own power and our own energy. Like even when, you know, even when we adopt these models that are self-serving, it's not like that things just stop coming up. And it's just that the way we're looking at them is much more empowering to be able to deal with them and to grow from them, where, you know, even the most, you know, quote unquote negative challenges are looked at as challenges that we have to work through, rather than, you know, these attacks on us from these, you know, demons or something like that. We just realize, like, you know, everything that we experience ever is working in our favor to like guide us closer and closer back into our power and into our light, you know?
Yeah, which is consciousness and truth and being in your own authority. And yeah, we can also see these things as alchemical interactions that's happening with everybody, you know? So different interactions you have with different people, it doesn't have to be like, oh, they have an entity. Maybe there's just something that you guys are collectively processing out for the universe together. And yeah, it's triggering both of your wounds, or it's triggering both of your fear, your shadows. But that's how we kind of
that's
heal.
How we grow.
Yeah, and that's how we grow and evolve and heal and just process everything out. And yeah, I think that we'll be doing more of this in the future as well, and definitely talking about the mutation that's happening in 2027. And with all the systems that we work with, it's really amazing because we realize that everything truly is energetic. So when I look at someone's charts, I can see, you know, all of these different codes in there where they might perceive reality as this way or that way in like a shadow state. You know, like the 47, they might feel oppressed. And that's how they're going to, you know, that's a shadow form of it. They might feel everything is oppressing them, instead of being in a state of, like, realization, right? That could be the form of it. And so we can look at these things, and this is how when we do sessions with people and we're with our group, we're going through each code and collectively discussing things and learning how the energetics flows together and all the systems. And we can really see that as we learn this together, that we can choose to either be in like the shadow state, or we can choose to be in a gift state. And if we do slip into shadow or like the fear, the wounding, because that still definitely happens.
We don't have to shame ourselves.
And we don't have to shame ourselves, and we don't have to we can catch it. That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter if you go there, if you have a slip and you didn't mean to, and you went down a fear path. It's okay, but now you catch it, and then you can bring yourself back, and that's kind of how the virus of the womb, brings you back, so that you're still in the womb of your central self.
And at one point, it leads to the birth,
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Like we're talking about this womb analogy. It's like basically like all of these things that are happening to us that are always in service to us. Because especially like if let's say we do look at this again like a womb, like the mother is, constantly like feeding all of these different nutrients and different things to the child until it's ready to like pop out and be born. And what we've discovered with a lot of these languages that we use in these codes is it's these same energies that we were experiencing before with a new face on them. And the more that we have like a greater, more encompassing map, we're bringing more and more consciousness. And, as Daniel Winter likes to say, our DNA is actually beginning to braid more into the reality around us, where basically what this means is the more consciousness and empathy we have, the more that we like expand our identity to take in more and more information. We use these different systems to navigate these energies. And like Danny was saying, so we, stay out of the shadow, or, basically.
Well, we really go fully into it.
Right. Yeah. We go fully into it, and we have a way to navigate it with each other.
It.
Yeah. To bring the light, which is the consciousness,
Yeah. Well, and that's what, we were watching the Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and he says this really awesome quote during the movie. He said, darkness is just hungry light. So it's the light goes to the darkness in order to have something to do. It wants to be of service. It wants to bring light to all these shadows. And I feel like that's what we're all doing individually, collectively, is bringing light to where there was darkness, and we can't be afraid of it. And we don't bring light to darkness when we are in darkness, that we cannot look at it, or we feel the darkness has power over us, or that there's something out there that's trying to get us. That's not helping the situation.
Well, yeah, it's like, I've heard plenty of times people talk about in dream work, when people step deep into, working with their own dreams and lucid dreams and things like that, where somebody gets chased. Like they have the repeated dream over and over for years or something. Oh, I was being chased by this thing, and it's terrifying, and I wake up in these sweats or something, right? And they go to somebody who actually knows about dreams, and they're like, oh, well, next time it happens, I want you to turn around and face the thing and run at it. And inevitably, almost every time in these different examples, the person's like, yeah, I just turned around and I faced it, and it disappeared, or it never came back again, because it was just some energy that we had.
I've had a dream like that.
Yeah.
Where I had 5 or 6 dreams in one night that was kind of the same kind of dream, and it was one of those things where I thought I was waking up, but then I realized I was in a dream again. And I saw this weird thing in my dream, this dark thing. And finally, after the 5th or 6th time of having the same dream, I was like, who are you? And it totally crumbled and disappeared.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just about facing it and not letting fear have any hold on you. And I feel that part of the reason also that there's all this collective fear is because on a planetary level with humanity, we don't know for sure what happens when we die, for example, right? So there's this uncertainty, and everyone's trying to figure out, oh, well, some people are oh, there's a God, and they're going to save us. We're going to go to heaven, and this group's going to go get a bunch of virgins, and this group is doing that and that. And so I feel like that's part of the whole the whole thing too. And with the mutation that's happening in 2027, there's going to be a shift in this ending of the cycle, and all of these fantasies and desires, and this is all coming from the 41st code, which is the initiator codon, which is where all human experience lies, and it's also what creates the all the ideas and fantasies about what could possibly happen after death. So because there's this uncertainty with that, I also feel that's probably where a lot of this stuff is coming, with the entities and the gods and the gurus and putting people above us. I mean, really though, it's like, I think that as more people start to come into their power and they get to a certain point in their spirituality or their internal gnosis, and they realize that the only thing to do is just to be yourself and to be in your authority, right? To be an equal. That's like the end goal, to just accept and surrender and be okay.
And that's the birth.
That's it.
And that's the birth. And it's so interesting too, because we've been, this whole time we've been talking about this kind of like womb archetype or whatever, right? And 3 of the primary codes within the DNA that are going through a major transformation right now, the 19 and the 55 and the 49. The 19, has so much to do with what we were talking about, giving our power away, like a codependency, basically like putting these gods or gurus or food or people above us, right? And then that leads in our genetics to the 49, which the 49 is all about like sacrificing for the gods, fear of the unknown and these gods and these sorts of things. That's interesting is the transcendent energy of the 49 is a rebirth. And it's all about like shedding this old kind of skin and being reborn as something higher, which is this sovereign being. And then the other side of the 49, they're in the same code they share, is the 55, which is, the victim or the freedom. So again, going back,
and the gate of the spirit and abundance, and
right, and leaving that idea that we were talking about, that there's anything out to get us, and turning it into, wait, like everything is always serving my growth,
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, because part of when we get more into a lot of the human design and the soul mapping stuff, we'll see that there are different circuits and different types of energies that people have as either collective or tribal or individual. So also I feel a lot of this stuff is coming from tribal energies, because the tribal energy is, okay, everyone does the stuff the same, it's about family and community, and everyone's the same. And if you're different, if you're unique, if you're an individual, then you're separate from the tribe, basically. So I feel a lot of that also is coming in, and it's, again, not bad. It's not negative. I think that we can all just understand that. So if some people have like more tribal energies, like for example, the 4037, which would be coming after the 1949 and going up into that pathway, people who have that are probably more likely to be in churches. And because that's all about, devotion and
group ritual
and agreements, the tribal agreement, okay, like you have to go to church and get on your knees and pray. And so there are those type of things too you can see in a chart, and it doesn't mean that the person has to go to church or whatever, but if you look at their patterns, they may have more ritualistic, more, ceremonial, church, religion, dogma, these types of things, and it's just a mechanism.
Well, yeah, they were created and embodied in order to basically give like a protection, like you were talking about, like it was tribal. So groups would get together and they're like, oh, if we follow these orders and these rules and these dogmas and these laws, then we can like
we'll have the resources.
We'll have the land. We'll share the resources. Oh, if you agree to this, I'll give you the land and the resources.
Yeah, the tribe is really all about business.
Right.
Right, and it's like the business of families, the business of the community, of sharing resources, of like possessing resources, material wealth, and things, which is important.
Right.
We need that, but it's also different than the individual or different than the collective. So,
Rich, now, because of these mutations, and just inherently, these mutations are both a byproduct of the development of consciousness in the species and the other way around too, we're getting to a point where the systems that are coming online are moving us into a new era. It's like we don't necessarily, we're moving out of the space where we need those types of things in order to be able to kind of like take resources and we can share them in different ways. That's why so much stuff is coming up about like, oh, let's have a sharing resource-based economy, and these things are coming up because these mutations in these codes are going on, and now we have like things like cryptocurrency and like these hydroponic systems that can grow all this food. And
it's interesting because it's more individual, more sovereignty for the individual. And the other thing that's interesting is like when the 41 cracks, and that's going to be the first thing that basically cracks in 2027, which again I was saying is the process of also seeking to know what happens after life and death, because it's a cyclical process. So the cyclical format of life and death is also changing. So I feel like that might also be why in 2027 we're going to have this huge generation, like all the generations born after 2027. There's not going to be religions, there's not going to be temples and altars, and
well, they'll still probably linger for a while. But
until the last person that was born before 2027, when that person dies, then it's like that whole, is this a different species?
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a whole class on that, but yeah, it's just really, really interesting to know that we're all different, and at the same time, we're all coming to this place of, how do I get my own inner power back? Do I really need to like fall victim to these beliefs? Like I've seen people like really in a lot of anxiety and depression over what somebody told them about either their karma or their like entities and all of these things, and people that like were suicidal from it.
You're right.
Destroying friendships, destroying families, destroying, it's just knocking you off your path. You're stuck in the virus at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the AI, it's the, the program, the matrix, the illusion, that's all that. It's when people talk about the government and all these things, and then they go to spirituality or they go to some other situation that's going to try to be the answer, and they find all these disempowering beliefs and they believe them, it's like another trap. It's like, here you are again in a disempowered place. It's not meant to be always there,
For sure.
So yeah, you don't have to believe that stuff. You can, if you want, check in with your own internal guidance system, your own authority. And
well, yeah, and that's why, to wrap this up a little bit too, for those of you that are out there listening, within the next week or so, one of the major things that we're going to be sharing with everyone is what we're calling the self-illumination path. And basically some of these archetypes and these codes that we've been talking about today, soul mapping, the larger picture that's being developed with soul mapping is kind of like an interactive game through these energies and these archetypes. And we're getting ready, which depending on when you're listening to this may have already been shared, but we're getting ready to release this first kind of set of levels, so to speak, which aren't even necessarily like levels. It's really just like a pathway through a lot of these archetypes to come into deeper and deeper levels of embodiment and sovereignty. Something where, we don't necessarily need, we can still have guides, there's always going to be people that are there to help us in terms of, any different sorts of knowledge, sharing their experience with us. But the whole idea of the soul mapping, the self-illumination path is a guide through where we're like guiding ourselves in a way through coming to these deeper levels of embodiment. And we're super excited to share all that with everyone,
Yeah, definitely. Super excited. And cheers to everyone's sovereignty and their amazing, internal guidance and tapping into your own authority. And you have permission to be yourself, whoever you are, and be unique and be different. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. We're
Radical
all here.
Self-acceptance.
Yeah, radically accept yourself, and
especially for all you people at Burning Man right now. I know you're all about the radical self-acceptance.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week, and thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Soul Mechanics.